All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, thank you for those who just logged in. This is our using the tenant portal training through Procorem and ProLink HFA, which is what our agency clients are using. This is February 16th, and I will introduce Sarah in just a minute, who's our instructor for today. Go ahead, Sarah. So I'm Recruiter. I'm the Executive Vice President for ProLink, which Procorem is one of the products that we support our agency clients with. And I'm joined by Kelly Insinuous, who's in the background. She's our HFA Senior Product Manager. She'll be helping us with Q&A today. And then Sarah Superna is our Customer Success Rep and Trainer. I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. It's thank you for joining us today. I know that some of you I've worked with, especially at agencies, regarding what we do during compliance season, which is what I call, January through March. So hopefully you will learn something new today. And if you need to reach out after this is over, we'll be here. I want to give a special shout out to Kimber at Oregon for providing me just a nice little outline for training to cover some items that I don't think we would have thought about covering if she hadn't assisted in that way. And our goal for today is to give you the tools to be able to successfully use our tenant portal with some tips and tricks that you may not have been aware of, because we want the experience of using our software to be good for you and help make life easier. So we're going to try to make it a little less cumbersome for this particular training. We'll have Q&A available during the training, and we're going to stop every now and then to kind of talk about any questions that might come up that are relative to the topic that we just covered. So if you have any questions or comments that you want to ask us, just try and pop them in the Q&A feature, and we will be able to address those with you.
Yeah, thanks. And then pay attention to the chat as well. I think our marketing team did just post, we are going to take that 10-minute break that we'll cover here on this agenda. So talking agenda, we're going to start with our introduction. I'll be providing that. We will cover invitation to Procorem, how that works, accessing the Procorem Tenant portal, tenant events in the Procorem Tenant portal, and then how to import tenant events. We'll then have that 10-minute break, which is hopefully about an hour in, and then finish with how to manually add tenant events and how to validate and submit tenant events. So that's going to take us through 2 hours of training. This is also being recorded, so we will be sharing this. You will have access to it following this event till the end of time, and it'll be on our YouTube channel. We'll continue to host these on occasion as updates are made, so that we stay trained and well versed in how to manage our tenant events. Okay, go ahead, Sarah. So a lot of you know ProLink. Many of you may not know us so well other than your interactions through Procorem, so I thought I'd give a brief introduction. ProLink Solutions has been in the affordable housing industry for the majority of our existence. We're getting close to 25 years old at this point. We started working with a couple of agencies early on to develop their asset management and kind of development of low-income housing deals. We built their database systems for tracking and managing that portfolio. And over the years, we have now kind of acquired and support over, I think, 20 agencies with various affordable housing programs. And ProLink HFA is that database tool that the agencies use to track their portfolios, compliance, asset management, really the entire life cycle of new affordable housing. And so that is our focus. And through that effort, we have developed additional tools like Procorem to interface and support partners with our agencies clients. And the point of Procorem is to provide collaboration and assist with those periodic efforts that we have with third parties, with each other, such as compliance. And so that's the season that we're in right now and what we're focusing on today. So again, we really specialize in building those holistic tools for the affordable housing industry. We also support the investor and syndicator level of affordable housing. And we do continue to add new features and benefits to Procorem to support additional groups. We've supplied and helped source gap financing for affordable housing through Procorem, and we continue to explore more and more opportunities to provide services to those who are logging in and interacting with our agencies for the benefit of supporting affordable housing. Our goal is really to increase affordable housing across the US. So however we can help with our tool set to make that happen, that's what we aim to do. And our team is technology based. We're a technology company, but many of us have been in this industry for a very long time, including Sarah. She's a great representation of that and have a very good understanding of the business and the requirements of affordable. So with that, I'm going to move on to our next slide. So one thing that we did want to make sure that everyone is aware of is ProLink is actually, we support the NAMA XML standards group on Procorem. So that group actually meets and collaborates through Procorem. And that's the group that really sets those standards for the fields that we're going to be talking about today, and that automatic import of XML into Procorem. That's the standard fields are dictated by NAMA. And so we are part of that group and helping to provide feedback for additional fields or changes that need to be made to that standard to better serve the agency's requirements and the requirements that you have to get that data in. And we do work to try to make it easier as much as we can for additional software providers on the property management side to start to use XML, use the NAMA standard, and incorporate that into their offering so that it is easier to export and provide that data to the agencies. Any other comments on NAMA from the group? I think that's it. Okay, great. We'll move forward.
Okay, so now we're actually going to start our training. Some of you that we've worked with, you know that when we talk about the browsers that we support for Procorem, we recommend Google Chrome. You can use other browsers, but generally Chrome works better with the software framework that we have. So there's sometimes you'll have a few little weird things that might happen that you're like, I don't know why this is happening. And if we talk to you about it, we're probably going to ask you, well, what browser are you using? So you'll hear us refer to Chrome as recommended and preferred. But if you have any problems with any other browsers, we're happy to try to help rectify it. If for some reason you cannot get your hands on Chrome, maybe your IT department doesn't like Google, I don't know, but we're here to help if we can get you through any speed bumps you might have with your browser. So the Procorem Tenant Portal is just an add-in to our Procorem platform, and that is how we allow the owner agents to collaborate between your agencies and the compliance officers and asset managers of your agencies to provide your tenant events on a yearly basis. And the key to that is getting an invite to Procorem from someone at the agency so you can sign up as a user in Procorem and then get access to the work centers where you will provide that information for your yearly compliance reviews. If you have multiple properties, your agency contact should add you to more than one of your work centers, and we'll show you kind of what that looks like. So the first step, and this might be old hat for a lot of you, but for any owner agents who have yet to begin working in Procorem, and I believe we do have a few people there, we're going to go over quickly the invitation part. Also, when we do upload this video to YouTube, we're going to kind of break it up into sections. So for those of you who are more focused on using the XML portion, you'll be able to like fast forward to that section. And anybody who uses the manual entry can fast forward to that section. So you don't have to sit through this entire thing again if you just want to go back and refresh your mind about what we talked about today. So to get an invitation to Procorem, when you're added to the work center as a collaborator initially, and you've never signed up in Procorem, you're going to get an email, and it's going to look something like this. And it's going to say, please join my private and secure work center. It will have the name of the work center. Most agencies do use the property name or some version of the property name as the work center name. So you should know what that's, exactly what you're signing up for lack of a better word. If it's the first time you've accessed it, you're going to get the sign up button, and we'll kind of see what that looks like. Now, if you don't receive an invite, or you haven't received any kind of, emails from Procorem, there's a couple of things we suggest. If your agency confirms that your email address is absolutely correct, check with your IT department to make sure that it's not in some sort of spam filter with notifications@mailprocorem.com. Also, it's not unheard of to set up a rule in your email client to put those Procorem emails somewhere else. And also check there. Worst case scenario, we can help you out. Once you've created your account in Procorem, any subsequent invites that you get are going to look more like, oh, okay, just view the work center that I'm inviting you to. You're already a member of Procorem. You don't have to sign up yet. So you can just click on view work center, and that's going to take you to the new work center that you've been invited to. And if for some reason you don't get an invite, when you do log into Procorem and you see your home screen, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, you'll see any activity. And if you've been invited to a new work center, it will give the option to accept that in Procorem. So once you click the sign up button on your invitation email, this is where you're going to land. The first thing you want to do is verify the first name and the last name are correct, and your email is going to pre-populate based on the email that was used to generate your invite. You're going to want to enter a password that meets the criteria. When you first look at this information, it's going to be red, but as you start creating your password and meeting the criteria, they will turn to green. Then you click the I agree to the terms and conditions. It's up to you if you want to read them. I know I never do when I'm on the internet. I don't know what I've signed myself up for. And then you'll click the sign up now button, and that's going to take you directly to your home page. This is what it's going to look like when you first go in there. Obviously, it will be your environment, but you're going to see the name of the agency that's invited you. Each agency has their own account. I do believe we have some owner agents that may provide support for other agencies with the reporting on tenant events. So you may have more than one account listed over here under recent. So you should see like the one work center that you were invited to, and how we get to that work center is you just click on this in the left nav panel. And once you click on the name of the work center, it's going to take you over here, and it's going to bring up the screen. The file screen is kind of where you begin. And let me see if I can kind of show you what that looks like in real time. Just so you know, I didn't make this up. So if I want to click on Stefano Gardens, it's going to take me straight to this particular page. And this is where I'm going to see all the other collaborators. Some will be internal, some will be external, but that's just kind of the first page you're going to get when you go to the work center. And another hot tip, Procorem emails notifications in real time for files and post and work center activities. And, if there's a lot going on in your particular work center, you'll get emails, as these things happen. And what you can do is you can go over when you are logged in, and you're going to have these options. Do you want immediate emails for this work center, or do you want them in a digest once a day? So if you uncheck immediate emails, it's going to update your preferences, and then you'll just get a daily digest of some of the activities on the work center, because you're mostly going to be concerned about your tenant events at this point. Once you've created your account, as I mentioned before, you will be receiving an email invitation for each work center that you've been added to. And then as you are added to more work centers, if you are, you'll see more of them over on the left side. If you just want to view all your work centers, maybe you have more than 4, maybe you have a lot. I have a lot. Click on go to account and you're going to get a work center page. It's going to show you all the work centers that you are associated to that you can collaborate with. Do we have any questions about the invitation to Procorem in the chat? I believe that we did have one question. Are we going to provide the material that we're showing today? Yes, we are. We will be sending out a PDF of this PowerPoint for you. I'm over here checking my Teams to make sure that my people aren't telling me anything. All right, so if there are no questions, and you can always hold those to the end or just pop them in the Q&A. Oh, we have 2 that are answered, Kelly. My mic is low. Whose mic is low? Were we talking? Are we good? If anybody can't hear me, I assure you, I would be happy to talk louder. I believe I have it in me to do that. Okay, so next we're just going to talk about accessing the Procorem Tenant Portal. We're going to cover these steps repeatedly. We're going to just kind of reinforce these, so there will be some repetition. So after you've logged in to Procorem and you've selected your work center, you're all going to be pros at this when we're done with this training. Log in, click on the work center. It's going to take you to this page here that we talked about earlier. And down in the left nav panel, which is kind of what we call this little area in the screen, you're going to see something that says tenant events. It may say unit status report. It may say annual tenant events entry. Each agency can customize that label for that page, but it is all the same thing. And once you hover over that little label there, it's going to tell you specifically, this will help you manage your compliance reviews for a specific property. So then you definitely know you're in the right place. Once you click on the tenant portal menu item to go to import your events, you're going to see the compliance periods page is displayed here. And that's going to be a list of all the compliance periods that your agency has created. And if it's blank and you know that you're supposed to be submitting your events and you don't see any records out there, put a post on the work center and we'll kind of show you how to do that later. Or contact your agency contact and be like, I don't have anything. I don't see anything. They may just need to add that compliance period for you to update. Now, these steps, the steps we just went through for accessing the tenant portal, the basics are the same whether you're using our XML import function or if you're just going to manually enter events. But we do have 2 sections dedicated to each way those are entered. So the first thing you do is provide your property data to the agency through Procorem, and that's what we're kind of talking about now. You may already have access to upload some annual certification files to a work center in Procorem, so that may be your initial experience in using Procorem. You can upload your files there. You can submit your tenant events to the portal. If you have a property management system, and this is where we get into the difference between XML importing and your manual tenant event entry. And by property management system, we're talking, and I don't want to play favorites, I'm just going to go off the top of my head, Boston Post, Yardi, Track Pro, RealPage, HAB Inc. We have a lot. If they provide the functionality in your software to generate the NAMA unit status report, you too will be able to import XML. And if you don't have a property management system and you have a lot of properties, highly suggest looking into that to make your life easier during compliance season. So if you have the property management system that does generate XML files, that's how you're going to do it. If you don't, you're going to manually enter your tenant events. In both scenarios, once you get all your data entered, we're going to have a validation process to make sure that there are no duplicate events, that everything is chronological, like you don't have 2 move-ins on the same unit with different household members. We're going to go through that process, which it can be frustrating, but we're here to help you. Then once you validate and correct your data and validate again, at that point, you're ready to submit your data and be done with it until your owner or your agency calls you and said, but wait, I have a question. All right, so accessing the tenant events in the tenant portal, we kind of talked about a little bit, the 2 ways, XML import, and what that's going to do when you click that page, it'll say import tenant events on this page. If you're someone who's going to manually import your tenant events or manually enter your tenant events and you see this page, you are in the wrong place because you cannot upload an XML file that you do not have. In that case, when you start going in to add tenant events, you're going to do it by compliance period and by unit. And that's what that's going to look like. And again, we're going to go into this and show you step by step how to do it. Now, something that I have been guilty of before is ignoring these pale yellow sections that are throughout the tenant portal. These actually have really good information, and a lot of it is what we're going to be talking about today. So they're worth reading these in case you have questions. It kind of tells you, here's the basic steps, what to do if you have questions, and any other information. Again, we're going to go through this ad nauseum. You will be able to probably quote the entire thing directly back to us once we're done with this training.
Hey, Sarah, I want to
Yes,
interrupt you for a
sir.
second.
Yes.
We had a question come in. Can you repeat the name of the report that can be generated in property management software to upload as XML?
I believe that each vendor may call it something different, but the one that I keep hearing the most of is NAMA Unit Status Report.
Okay.
And it's going to be XML or it's going to be text file. And again, we don't have a lot of visibility into those products from those vendors because we don't use them. What I do know is just what I've gathered from working with different owner agents who were fighting with it. If you get stuck and you don't know what the name of it is, you can always call your vendor help. And that should be your first point of contact if you can't find this. You may find out that you don't have it in your, whatever current subscription you have. But they'll be able to tell you how to generate the NAMA unit status report. I believe that that may or may not be the standard name for it across the board. And I'm sure that some of my owner or my agency contacts out there and owner agents that I have worked with before can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Drop me an email and educate me. That's totally fine. And we have another question. Let's see. We're providing slides for this training. Can more than one person be associated with one email? If you have like a property management company and the name of it's going to be your property management company, you could have two people sharing that email. But I mean, basically the email address is what you're going to use to log in. I don't know if that completely answers the question. Shayla Anderson has asked, when uploading an XML, the property name has to match exactly. We're going to cover this in this next thing. We do have enhancement that I want to add that's going to display the name of the property on that page exactly, because since we do have some naming conventions that are different, we have a plan to address that other than you making sure with your agency, but we'll get to that, I promise. We're going to go through, I see some questions, Rachel, Melissa, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover some of these things right now in the next 5 minutes, so bear with me. So, okay, again, we all know how to get to the tenant event portal now. Navigate to the work center, click on tenant events, see your compliance screen. I'm going to try to stick to, using 2022 for this particular exercise. I may, bot between years, I'm not sure. If you don't have any records, again, contact your agency, say, I don't see any compliance periods, and try to figure out what your disconnect is there. So once you get to compliance period screen, there is some information here. There's the events status. It's going to show none or pending. That's going to be where you can enter your events. Like, let's say for some reason 2021 is open and the events are pending. That means you can make any edits that you need to in case that maybe you missed a move out or missed a move in, or there's some data that needs to be reconciled from the previous year. That would be one reason. And if you see where it says none, that means no tenant events have been entered at all for 2022. That could mean that an import failed, and it could mean that you just haven't gotten to it yet. Now, once the event status is at submitted, you're not going to be able to add any more events. If you've already imported your XML and uploaded your events and it's in a status of submitted, at that point, you're probably going to want to contact your agency to talk to them about that. Then we also have this option, export events for each year. That's just going to bring up an Excel spreadsheet that shows all the events and most of the data that you imported. That's just an informational tool for you. It comes in handy, I would guess, if you're doing your manual events, because at that point, if you say you have to enter events for 100 units and you got to 50 and you called it a day, because why wouldn't you? And you come back the next day, if you forget where you were at, you can do an export and be like, okay, I see where I stopped. So apologies. So we've covered, this will list all the compliance periods here. You'll be able to see where you're going to be able to actually go in and update any information. So once you have chosen which compliance period you want to access and import that XML file for, you will click View Events. Once you click View Events, then you're going to get the compliance period page for that selected compliance year. Now is when the magic starts happening. Or so I've been told, and I'm just gonna advertise it that way. There's some good information on the screen, and this is some of the questions that we're getting about data not matching in the XML file as to what your agency has in Procorem. So when you go to the compliance period page, there's going to be a lot of information out here. You're going to be able to see the building address and the bin. Now, this will be the building name. We have a config setting that allows you to expand and collapse by building that your agency may or may not choose to turn on. And when you're, looking at some of these massive properties that have like 50 buildings in them, this is great, especially if you have to manually enter your information. So this can be expanded and collapsed. Let me kind of give you a quick look at what that's going to look like. So here on this screen, this is the same property that we're playing with. And you can just expand and collapse. You're going to see the building names, and that's all that's going to show. So then you can go and view information by building if you need to. You're also going to have a head of household displayed for the latest tenant event that was entered in the system, just to, keep those straight. And if you're importing via XML, at this point, you'll want to click Import Tenant Events. That's going to be enabled as long as everything's in the right status. Now we're going to talk about breadcrumb. This is something that I want to point out before we get deep in here, because you're going to see me reference the breadcrumb several times. The breadcrumb is this ribbon at the top of the page that's kind of tells you how you got there and where you're at. So if you ever get stuck and you don't remember what compliance year that you're in or what work center you're on, you can look up here and this is going to tell you. And we're going to use these breadcrumbs to navigate a little bit between some of these screens at some point. But when we talk about breadcrumb, this is what we're talking about. So once you have clicked Import Tenant Events, your Import Tenant Events page is going to display. This is where you can verify again in the breadcrumb that you're on the right period. At that point, you've generated your file. You may have saved it to your desktop, or you may have some kind of sorcery that I swear I saw, where some property management systems can just generate that file to a selected URL magically, which is awesome, except you still have to come in and verify that it imported successfully without errors. You can't just shoot it off into the interwebs and hope that it's going to work. It needs a human touch. No Rick Springfield pun intended, but you're going to have to verify that this information is going to be, accepted and properly processed. Once you selected the correct file on your desktop, you'll just click that and click Open. And then once you do that, you're going to see that the file that you selected right here is going to populate the name of it next to Choose File. This is your chance to cancel out if you've messed up and uploaded something else that you didn't mean to. You can cancel and just start the process over. And that's easy enough. So these are the simple things we do, how to upload the file. And if you do have your property management software, I'm sure by now a majority of you are experts at generating the XML file and going through this process. Most of the tickets that we receive regarding this from owner agents, it's like, what's going on. You just don't know what this error means. And it's very weird and odd. So successful import. This is what we all strive for. This is what you want. This is best case scenario. Once you upload your XML file, you're going to see it kind of go into this little processing area right here. And then you're going to see a message that says tenant event import has been scheduled. That basically means it's in the queue to run. It's going to process your file. So please stand by and be patient. The import can take several minutes. As most of you do know, it's a good time to get up, take a walk, go have a snack or something. When you first upload it and it starts processing your file, it's going to say pending. And that's good. It's going to say pending and the file name, step 1. That's awesome. Then once it gets more into the file, it's going to show the vendor name and it's going to say processing. Now, again, if it hasn't updated, it's going to, refresh every 10 minutes. But if you come back and it's still processing, you can go to your browser and just click that little refresh button there. And I just do it like every 10 minutes or something. I wouldn't do it a lot just because, the more you refresh, the longer it might take just to return your data and your information. Now, this is the holy grail of tenant event imports. If you see this message down here on first import, like validation passed, tenant event import was successful, these events were imported, that's perfect. You have no error message. That is fantastic. Everything is wonderful, as long as these events kind of match what you expected to import. So at that point, you would go to return to compliance period. You can do that by scrolling down on this page at the bottom of the import tenant events page. You're going to see that return to compliance period button, or you can click on your breadcrumb and like the 2021, if that's the year you're doing, and then go to tenant event validation that way. We're going to cover the tenant event validation portion separately because we're going to have to go through some steps to get the validation. But again, this is going to show you, this is the yellow area we were talking about. Every time you upload a new XML file, all the events previously are deleted and re-added. That's to make sure that you don't have duplicate data. It's to make sure that we're importing the most recent data that you've extracted from your property management system. New events will be created. If it's finalized within the agency, you cannot import tenant events. Notify the work center owner or agency asset managers for any hold on a second, I'm replying to something. So notify the work center owner of agency asset manager for any XML imports that you cannot resolve without assistance. And by doing that, you can contact them whatever way that you normally do, or you can just in your work center where you're uploading this information, just throw a post on there and say, hey, I'm having problems. Can you help me? And reach out to them that way. So this is what most of you have been waiting for. Errors on your import, how to fix them and what they mean. They mean many different things, and we have a few different errors that you can get. You can get system errors, which is kind of a software thing. It's not necessarily data or NAMA related. And those are going to be different, and there's different ways that you address those. If you receive system errors on import, enter a support ticket. Because the first key that it's failed with errors is going to say import status failed with errors. Now you can look over here at this particular message and kind of see that, I don't know what that means. That's just a software error. We want to know about that. And we're going to talk about how to submit a support ticket at some point during this training. But that's something that has nothing to do probably with anything that you've done. That's just, oh no, we got a bug. Second one is failed with errors. This may not look familiar to you and it may not make sense to you. It's like, I don't know what that means. The most important thing is that your tenant event import was unsuccessful. And in this scenario with this particular example, I've tried to upload a zip file. You cannot upload a zip file. You just can't. It has to be a TXT or XML file. You upload an Excel file, you're going to get some kind of weird error because it cannot be Excel. You also cannot convert an Excel rent roll to an XML file and upload it because you're going to get an error like this. Any error that doesn't display easily recognizable data, that's when you want to report that to ProLink. Like this one, I know that we had a few weeks ago experiencing the deadlock and deadlock victim errors, which is kind of like scary and nefarious, but it's not really. But we did thankfully have people report this to us, and we were able to take care of that with our developers. And you can report things of that nature by using the support button at the bottom of your browser when you are logged into Procorem. And we'll kind of review that at the end of this presentation as well. Now the data errors. All right. First thing, if you receive errors on your import, that means all tenant events have not been imported successfully. And it's kind of, it's kind of a double-edged sword here, because you'll see that it says completed. So you're like, yay. And then you see that information imported, yay. But then you see this one warning that this particular unit can't convert to a transfer in type because they can't find the building. So that means basically there's 2 events in there that are not going to be added to your import. So that's something you would need to go and check back in your system and see if the transfer in type, the from building, and the to match up and they can reconcile with each other, and you'd want to regenerate and re-import your file. Most of our error messages, not all of them, and we're working on getting all of them in here, they're going to display a unit number that tells you exactly where this error is happening. So you can go into your property management system and you can reconcile that. So in this example, when it says tenant event cannot have program type of market and be in the LIHTC program, that means that you basically have a unit type of market for that unit in your system, but you've got it flagged to be a tax credit or a home event, and you can't, a home unit, and you can't do that. So again, anything that comes up like that, you need to correct in your property management system, regenerate the XML file, and import that XML file again. Something like this, reporting start date and report doesn't fall within the ones identified in the system. Coordinate with your agency, the asset manager or compliance officer, and ask them what those compliance period dates should be. From what I've seen, usually it's January 1st to December 31st, but every agency is different. I also want to mention that while we're showing you today kind of how the system works, we can show you how to save things, some errors that you can get through. But as far as information that gets populated, some of our agencies have training, and they may have a certain way that you want to do things. And what they say overrules what I say, because they're the ones in charge of all of that. We're just trying to facilitate the process for everyone who has to use our system. So here's some more XML errors that we can talk about. The address doesn't match. Okay, I know there are many people on here who have used XML who have received these errors. So this means XML is very picky, it's very particular, and it wants everything to match exactly. You can see over here in the system, your agency has the building address at 554 Riello Ave. And here it shows you in your XML that you're going to have, that you have it spelled out Avenue. So that's an easy fix for you to make in your system. Just shorten that to AVE to match. And if you accidentally add like a space on the end, XML is gonna bust you on that. It's gonna be like, oh, that's not the same. And you're not gonna know why. And you're gonna find out that it was just a silly space and you had to backspace and save it again. Oh, apologies, I just went backwards. Then we also have the same issue with the bin. The bin does not match. So you have to verify the bin on the compliance page. And again, it comes into, hey, in your system, this log message says that the XML is displaying that bin as CO-19-this. This doesn't have dashes. So you have to update the bin in your system to remove the hyphens. So it exactly matches the format of the bin here. So those are 2 of the most common errors that I've seen when we have support tickets entered for assistance. Reporting start and end date, we talked about that. That's when you want to get in touch with your agency and make sure that your dates match their dates. And the property name. This is the big one. Property name and imported file does not match the property for this compliance review. Like I mentioned before, the work center name may not be the exact name of the property that your agency has in ProLink HFA. Again, that's something we're working to make easier because some of our agencies have a certain way they want to name their work centers and manage their categories and whatnot in there. We're going to add a read-only field that's going to tell you exactly what the property name is on the compliance periods page, so you know. So it's like, okay, the work center may say this and the work center may have some kind of number in it, but we're going to bring the data directly back from the property to display there. So there's no question about what your property name should be in your property management system. Oh, yes. You can see here where it says tenant event import was successful and there were events imported. But if you do get one of these no building found errors or the bin doesn't match or something like that, what that's telling you, it's like, yeah, we imported some of your tenant events, but not for the building with this address. We didn't, because we couldn't find a building associated to it because the address was a little different. Same for the bins. So don't get too excited. Yeah, you got some events imported, but not all of them. So you're going to have to update your information and regenerate your file. So now we have the NAMA standards ones, and this is where we talk about race and some other things. And I know those are always a question about, why is this working? Why is this invalid? I'm not sure why this is happening. So bear with us and we're going to go through that. One thing, as negative amounts are not allowed. If you have a household income from asset situation where somebody's like, oh, they lose $1,000 a year or something. No, you can't just have it zero or don't put it in there, or find a way that your agency expects you to handle that data, because it's not going to accept negative amounts for anything. The ethnicity type values not meeting NAMA standard values. Ethnicity type combination invalid. We're going to talk about this here in just a second and more in depth. This is something that I know a lot of people are like, I don't know why this is happening. There's some weird rules around the ethnicity from the NAMA standard, and we'll talk about it. Gender value. Gender value is an invalid. There's only 3 options right now for NAMA, and that's M, F, and NA. I anticipate at some point there's going to be additional ones added, but I'm not aware of when they're going to do that. But you would just think logically they're going to at some point. Race type values, same thing. And there's a very easy check for some of these values when you get out there and you do get this, race type combination invalid, ethnicity type combination is invalid. Income type attribute, the valid A is invalid. This is an example that I had. Someone was entering or selecting a value of A in their system for alimony, and alimony actually falls under non-wage income, I believe. But these are just some normal XML errors you may get just because the data you have in your system isn't exactly matching what NAMA expects. So what is this NAMA standard of which we speak? Best way to do it, and I'm going to do this right now over here in my system, is I am going to Google data transfer, and you may have other contacts for this, but if you Google data transfer standard dictionary, it's going to bring you to this nice little document that is 5.0. This is from 2018. I know that we've moved on to version 6.0. I cannot find any data transfer standard data for 6.0. I feel like a lot of it's the same, at least from what I've experienced from fielding questions and support tickets. Anybody who has a newer version of this, you can email it to me and I'll be your best friend.
Sarah, we have
yes.
version 6.0 on the NAMA XML standards group on Procorem. That's available. And those
Awesome.
of you, if you're not a member on that Procorem Work Center, please type into the Q&A your email address and I will get you added. Okay.
Thank you. I have been searching high and low for that. Thank you, Kelly. Oh, hang on a second.
Just a
Just
quick
make those up.
FYI too, Sarah, 6.0 is on there, and we are currently working on a 7.0 release, which we're hoping to get out sooner than later, because we're trying to include average income test
Yeah.
information. So just so everybody knows, 7.0 is gonna
Yay.
come out soon.
Okay, so yeah, go out to the Procorem and our work center to get that one. But this is what it looks like. If you're an owner agent who doesn't have it, you can get it from your agency, and it sounds like we're getting the newest version. That makes me ridiculously happy. And I'm just going really quick through here. It's got 48 pages. It kind of shows you the type field, the field name, and things that are valid entries for those, like what values are okay. Low income market employee unit. That's the only unit type that you can have available in your system. And I'm sure that the vendors are perfectly aware of all of these NAMA standards, and they code to that. I'm assuming that one. So again, like when we talked about ethnicity type, and the rules are kind of weird. If you have a PRC, MAC, or O, you also have to have an age. And it kind of gives you these an idea of what those combos are. The biggest issue is that a lot of times I will see that someone may have, let's just say, I don't know, O, and then missing, or O and TDR. Missing, if you have a value of missing selected for ethnicity type, that's the only value you can select and have your file accepted. Same thing with TDR. TDR is tenant declined to respond. The tenant cannot decline to respond and then say that they're Cuban. That is not allowed. It's just TDR. So if you have a value in your system for a household member that says HPC TDR, that's not valid. It's got to be H and PR, or it has to be TDR. So that's when you get that, go back and make sure that your ethnicity type selected for that household member match what NAM is telling you is okay. Income types, like I was mentioning earlier, A is not valid because it would fall under other non-wage source. So these are the valid income types that should be in your system. Social Security number. So that field in XML only holds the last 4 digits, and it's not required, but it can't be blank, I don't think. So if you want to send 000, you can do that. But if you enter a SSN that's got 9 digits in it, is that how many? 3, 4, 5, 9. It's going to kick it back because it's only looking for 4, whether it's the last 4, which I think is normally what people input. But yeah, if you're just going through your system and you're not collecting the information, but it needs to be in there, just put 0. Otherwise you can leave it. I don't think it's required. It just has to be a specific format if you're going to use it. Alien registration number. This is another one that I've seen a lot of tickets for and a lot of import errors. That number needs to start with an A, and then it has to be followed by 9 digits. And it tells you right here, starts with A, and then whatever the 9 numbers following that is. If your alien registration number does not have an A and does not meet this format and number of characters exactly, it's not going to import, and you're going to get an error for that one as well. And now we talk about race type. Race type is a little more forgiving than ethnicity type because you can have, I think, up to 6 options from this particular one. But again, like we talked about with the ethnicity type, you can't pick ACH and TDR because TDR means tenant declined to respond. That should be the only value for that household member. Same thing with missing. You know, it's TDR and nothing else. Missing and nothing else. But otherwise, you can pick up to 6 race types to on your household member, and it will accept that. And then we have gender. We talked about these are our 3 that we have. And again, I anticipate at some point we're going to have to address adding some other values. All right, so resolving the XML errors, data errors. You may have seen these before. Tenant event cannot have program type of market and be in the LIHTC program. This means that you have a unit that's a unit type of market, but it also has tax credits selected on that unit. So you can't You can't do that. If it's a market unit, you cannot select tax credit or home for that. Conversely, if it's a low income unit, you have to have one selected. It has to be lower tax credit or home. One of the weird errors we've seen before is home unit type is required on a tenant event when home is a selected program. This error, I've asked it to be clarified because it's not super clear. It's basically saying that if you have a home unit, a value of 1 must be selected for low or high for home unit type. So those are the only values that we process or that we need is low or high with our import. Another error that you're going to see coming up, and we made some changes just so we can get this in the front and you don't have to worry about dealing with this after you've submitted your events. You have to have a transfer out and a transfer in associated. You can't have a loan transfer out because you have to have the transfer in, because did you stick those tenants on the roof? Because they have to have a unit to go into. So the idea is we're going to check that for you. Kelly, are you laughing?
Yes, sorry.
Good, thank you. So is my dog. No, just kidding.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at you. I'm sorry, but.
Well, thank you, because it's kind of supposed to be funny a little bit, but yeah, we've talked about, you're going to have, those have to match. You have to twin those together. And if you don't, it's going to tell you, but it's also going to say, hey, you got to transfer out for G306 and you just need to go add the transfer in event in your system and regenerate the XML. Every time we talk about making updates in your property management system to reconcile these errors, it is going to involve regenerating that file again and importing again and just, wash, rinse, repeat until we get it right. So the successful import, again, you've seen all these errors. Let's say you've cleared all the errors and now you've done it. You fixed all the errors. It's great. Everything got imported and it's just the best day ever now because you went through all that, you got it done, and I'm not your boss, but I think after everything we just went through right there, especially when you're really doing it, you should take the rest of the day off. But that's just me. But wait, there's more, and you're not done yet. You can take the rest of the day off and then come back and do this part later, because again, we've gotten over the first mountain. This will be our second mountain. I'm looking at our time. I'm going to run through this real quick because we want to take a break. It turns out that I talked slower than I thought I was going to. All right. Once you have the magic, everything's imported correctly and we don't have any errors and all the data sets been taken care of, then you're going to be able to return to compliance period to do the validation piece. Or you can click on the breadcrumb to get you back to here. But this is the screen that you want to get back to because this is the button you're going to want to push. Whoops. You're going to click on tenant event validation. That's going to take you to the tenant event validation screen. And on the first time that you have imported everything successfully, this is what it's going to look like because it's the first time. It's new, it's fresh, and you need to verify how many events are in there so you know it looks right. Like let's say you have 50 units and you think you imported events for 50 units and it only says like 2. You're going to be like, what happened? You're going to need to go back to the import page and make sure that everything was successful and just kind of do some research to see, did I miss something? What did I forget? Because we're humans, we're not perfect. I am especially imperfect when it comes to working with this data and testing data. It's okay. You can just go back and just figure out, what's missing and get it back in there. So you can also ask your agency what happened. Do you not have these unit numbers? And again, if you get stuck, we can help you if your agency can't. 99.99% of the time, they absolutely can. So once you're here and you want to validate, you'll just click the validate button. Again, verifying that these are the amount of units and events that you kind of have a ballpark figure that makes sense to you. Here you go. Validation has passed. And you get the happy green thumbs up. At this point, you get to submit. And that's the best because then you're done. You're really done. And then again, you get to, this is the happiest path ever. Don't be discouraged if we're going to go down the unhappy path now, if this is where you go, because it could happen. Sometimes you're going to go validate and it's going to give you some errors. You're going to be like, what? Basically, this just means that, it will bring up validation errors for things that are out of order, like the move in and a move in together, or a move out and two move outs together. It kind of tells you what it's going to do, but you can just click on this, on the hyperlink to go to the unit number directly. When you click on this, it's going to take you to either the unit, where you can look at the list of the events to see which one, one of these things is not like the other and one just doesn't belong. And then you can handle that manually after you have imported your XML. But we do suggest that you make those updates in your property management system just so your data is consistent across the board. And once you have made those corrections, the other thing you want to do, you're going to validate again. It is possible that after you've made some corrections, you're going to validate again. It's going to come back and you're going to have some other validations. And for some reason, XML is fussy and it doesn't want to give you all the errors at once. So we all just kind of live through that. But these are some of the validation errors that are easily rectified by clicking on here. This is going to take you to this unit with that household member, and you're going to be able to make a change there. The most important thing that I think needs to be reiterated is once you're going back and forth in here and making these changes, when you click on here, make the change, come back to the screen, click on here, make the change. The screen's not going to dynamically update because it doesn't know that you've done that. The screen isn't smart enough to know that you've made these changes. So you're going to have to tell it to validate again after you've made these edits to fix these errors. I was going to talk about units. Household income record with populated annual income amount is required. This is going to be an agency config setting. Some of your agencies may not require you to have a household income record for households that do not have an income. But if for the agencies that do not have that set, even if you know that your head of household or your household has no income for the year, you still need to put in a record that says their household income is 0. Tenant rent portion is another field that's required. That's easy. You just click on that link. It will take you to the event. You can manually update the tenant rent portion in there. And that's why I mentioned that people who use XML, and that's their main way of getting their events in there, to stay for the manual entry portion, so you kind of know what that looks like if you don't. All right, so again, we've gone through, we've done all these things, we've validated, we've corrected. It's happy hour somewhere, I'm sure at this point. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. But after you correct all those validation errors, you're going to get the past indicator. It's okay if you didn't get it the first time out. It happens to everybody. Eventually, this is where we want to get. And it will tell you if you've added or updated events since a certain time and you want to validate again. Just risk it and do it. Now, once we get here, then we submit the tenant events. And after everything we've been through, we're done. It's really done. It's really done. Then you're done with this year and you don't have to worry about it until next year. So to close out importing tenant events via XML, what happens next after we've all gotten the green thumbs up, the successful submit? What do we do now? You can't import anything because you've submitted. Submitted means you're just hands off for now. And if you need to make any changes, the agency will open up that compliance period for you to go in and make some changes. And they will get in touch with you and let you know that, hey, we need to take care of a couple more things before we can call this good. So once you get to this point, if you're a owner agent who uses the XML import, you're good until your agency says you're not. And we probably won't hear from you till next year, which is great. It's great for you. So do we have any questions on this portion of the training? And Kelly, do you want to speak to that? Or do you have any questions that anybody wants me to ask or to answer? And I should open up my Teams chat to see if you're talking.
So far, we're okay, Sarah. We're just getting lots of folks wanting to join the NAMA XML Work Center. And so I'm recording those and I'll get those invites out to you.
Awesome.
Otherwise, I think we're pretty okay.
All right. Well then, folks, it is break time. And we will call it in 10 minutes and be back then. All right, everyone. Welcome back. We will get to the second part of our presentation right now. But before we get started, let me just reiterate that keep the questions coming in the Q&A. And I think that Kelly and Sam are going to answer those as we go. We should cover a lot of things. And if we do miss something at the end, I think we're going to have plenty of time for questions that we can address outwardly and speak to, so everyone gets the benefit of hearing the question and the answer. And that way we make sure that we've covered all your needs and addressed all the questions that you have for us. So we're talking now about how we add tenant events manually. We have covered the import XML process, and entering the events manually is a little different, but we do have some of the basic ways that we go through and do it that are similar to XML. The first thing is accessing the tenant portal, which I believe at this point in our presentation, we could all do in our sleep, perhaps. Select the compliance period, select the unit, add the tenant event. Then you'll enter the tenant event info, the household member info, the household income info, and the household income from assets info. So again, accessing the tenant portal, log into Procorem, click on your work center where you want to add your tenant events. Select the tenant portal menu item in the left navigation panel, and then you're going to get your compliance period screen. If the page doesn't display, again, contact your agency directly and ask them to please add their compliance periods. You can do that by a post in the work center, or you can call the agency and try to find who your asset manager is and get in touch with them that way. So on the compliance period screen, again, just some indicators to know what status your compliance period is currently in. Pending and none. When it says events pending and none, that's a status where you will be able to add events. If it's submitted, you're not going to be able to add events. Because once you click view events and you go into that and you try to go into a unit and add anything, it's not going to let you because that functionality will be disabled. We talked about the export events, exporting the Excel spreadsheet for you to just view the data that you've already entered. You cannot use that file to upload anything. It's just a straight data dump for you. And then once you select the year that you're going to add the tenant events for, in this scenario, we're just going to continue adding for 2021. We can click view events. And that is going to take us to this compliance period screen right here for the compliance year that you selected to view events for. So once you're on this particular screen, you're going to have your units display by building and by building address. And so this is kind of the benefit of entering your events manually. You don't have to worry so much about these things matching, but you do have to make sure you're adding the right data to the right unit with the right household. Again, we talked about being able to expand and collapse by building. So if you have, let's just say you're one of those properties that have 1 unit per building and you have 20 buildings and you only have to put in 20 units in tenant events, but this way you can expand through them and take a look. Head of household, just kind of, keep you knowing where you're at and which event you're on if you're on the right event. You can check the household member name. Tenant event validation will take you to the tenant event validation screen after you have finished entering your events. Now, if you want to validate as you go, you can, you just don't want to submit. But, if you're not entering that many events, you might just want to wait until you're done entering everything to go forward and do that. So to add a tenant event manually to a unit, what you're going to do is you're going to find the unit over here and you're going to click on it. And that's going to take you to the tenant event page. And if you're a manual entry person, do not even touch this button because you'll be like, I don't know why I can't use this. It's going to be because you don't have XML. So just ignore that if you're a manual entry type person. Now, if you look at this page and you see any units or buildings or bins that are missing, you might want to get in touch with your agency to make sure that your data matches their data and everyone is literally on the same page with the property data. So once you selected the unit, it's gonna display this screen. And it's gonna give you the building, the household member, and the unit number. And so what that kind of looks like, I'm gonna do it over here in real time. Expand this. I want to add a tenant event here. I'm going to bring up for this unit C102. My Procorem is going to take its time because it's scared of being watched. Then it's going to show all the tenant events that are in the system that are, historical records and information related that way. So once you get to that point, you're going to click verify you're in the right period. I'm going to tell you right now, if you go in here and this says 2020 and you try to add maybe a household update for 2019, it's not going to let you. It's going to give you an error saying you can't do that because this is not within the compliance period that you're in. So then you'll click add tenant event. And then you're going to get your new tenant event record where you can enter all your data. And again, if you have to get up and walk away and get lost and come back, this breadcrumb up here is going to tell you where you're at. You're at this compliance period and you are on this building and this unit number. So once you get to the tenant event tab, the way Procorem works is we have red ribbons that designate what fields are required to save the record. You can just put in the basics, save it, and then come back and update the rest of it. You can tell that event type, event date, and unit type are required because of the red ribbons. We do have some required fields that don't have a red ribbon. If you do have low income, you're going to have to pick a program. If you don't scroll down to the bottom of your tenant event to pick a program for that event, once you save the record, it's going to tell you that you have to pick a program. Tenant rent portion, this is required. You can save the record without the tenant rent portion, even if it's 0, but you have to have a value in there because if you don't, once you go validate, it's going to call that out and say, hey, you need to add a tenant rent portion on this event. Additional tabs are not going to become usable really until you save the initial tenant event. What that means is that after you enter your tenant event data, save it. And I know we've had tickets about this, about how I can't add a household member or an income. You have to save that main tenant event record first in order to be able to click on those tabs and then click the add household member, add household income from assets button. That's usually, if that happens to you, you're like, but I put in the information, just make sure you saved it. And while we do require certain fields in our system to save the records from just, a software standpoint, do confer with your agency to verify that you're entering all the data that they require you to enter for their compliance tracking. So hold on a second. I feel like I missed something. Let me pop into this tenant event really quick and go over something because I feel like I might have accidentally deleted a slide and that would be terrible. In the tenant event, you're going to see that this particular event's got recertification, event date, etc. This is going to be a read-only field. And that pulls directly from the ProLink HFA system. Another thing that you're going to see if you have a transfer out event, it's going to give you the option to select the transfer to building and the transfer to unit. And that is going to be required if you're going to transfer anything. So that's kind of just a nuance there depending on your event. So I'm just going to pop back to certification. This total household members and everything is going to display here. It's going to be read only from various other fields. Any values you have for federal rental assistance amount or non-federal, etc., you can identify that data here. Like I said, this is the only one required, but if your agency wants you to provide the utility allowance and other non-optional, you would do that. If you have any of this information and your agency has this turned on, they'll ask you to enter this. And then this is the program selections down here at the bottom of the screen that you can scroll down to get to. So add your household member. After you have saved the data on the tenant event tab, you can save your household members. Now, if the event is a recertification or a household update, student update, run update, and I believe transfer outs to transfer ins, those household members are going to pull over with that event. If you're doing just a move in, then you're going to have to enter all those household members initially on the first move in of them being a tenant at the property. So when you add your household member, the required field specifically to focus on first is going to be the last name, the first name, and the relationship. And there can only be one head of household at a time. So you cannot select more than one member to be head of household. Then you'll have your birth date. For an unborn child, people ask this a lot. It's only required if the property has the home program. And the due date and adoption date can be used for birth date for an unborn child or a foster child. Gender, social, race, ethnicity, those are not required, but your agency probably does require them. But you have to mark this as a yes or no for a LIHTC full-time student on any low-income unit. I believe in home will have a different field, but this has to be populated yes or no, because this is another thing that when you go and validate, if you don't have a household member that has a yes or no, it's going to tell you to go back and correct that. And again, we can't say this enough, or we require certain fields to save on records. Please verify with your agency folks that you have entered all the information they require, because they will absolutely let you know if you don't. Other things on the household member tab include social security number. Like we said, this is not required. You can type in the last 4 digits. You can type in 000. If you end up typing in the whole number, the first 5 digits will be masked, and we're just going to report on the last 4. I think that's all we're going to keep in there. And this is where we get to the race and ethnicity selections and must adhere to NAMA requirements. And we talked about that at length previously. And if you don't do these correctly, it's going to tell you. And I'm going to kind of bring this up and show you what that's going to look like. If I can pop on over here. So when you're manually entering something, you can see here, I'm going to get rid of all of these and just kind of start fresh so you can see what this looks like in action. Going to save this. We haven't identified anything. If I try to do tenant decline to respond and non-Hispanic or Latino and save this record, it's going to yell at us. When we get an error message, we just call that yelling at us because we think that's funny. So it's basically saying you can't do that. So I can do that and save it, and it's going to like that. It's going to be cool with that. And it will tell you that it saved successfully. These little messages they come and they go, and you just have to catch them as you can because they don't stick up there. They're not sticky errors. Same thing with the race option. If you go in here, you can choose more than one, but if I do like other and tenant declined to respond and I save it, it's going to tell me race type combination is invalid. So then I'm going to get rid, I can just make this other, and I can do tenant declined to respond. And it's okay with that, just one thing. So that's kind of what some of those validations do look like in the portal itself when you're adding events manually. When you have a home event, if home is selected as a program that you selected on the tenant event page, you're going to have home student information to populate down at the bottom of that screen. So remember, if you have home, there's some other information you can provide to your agency. Once you've entered all the information on your household member tab, you can click Save and New if you need to add another household member, or you can hit Save and Return if you're done entering household members and you just want to go back and start working on income. It'll take you back to the tenant event main tab. Household income tab. Again, once you save the tenant event and you come to this tab, this will be enabled for you. Once you click that, this is a pretty simple screen. You just pick your household member. That's the only thing that's required, but I would put a 0 in just so you know that you have a record for this household. You can choose the source of income, the other source. If you have other source selected, you might want to populate the other source text here. If you have a verification date, this is where you would populate that. And then enter annual income, if any. Again, if this is a zero income household, just hit a 0, and then you can save and return and be done with that. Your agency may not require a record for zero income tenant events, and I think your agency might provide guidance for that if they're one of the agencies who are like, it's fine if you don't have, you don't have that populated for a zero income household. This is kind of like a safety net to make sure that you didn't inadvertently not report an income for a household. It kind of forces you to take another look to make sure that it is indeed a zero income household. And again, like with the other records, you can do save and new if you need to add another household income record, or you can hit save and return and go back to the main tab. And then we have our household income from assets tab. If there's any of that, and it's not required, but if for some reason the household does have income from assets, there's some fields you should fill out here. You can click out add household income from assets. And then again, it's going to look very similar to the household income screen. Pick your household member and the type of asset. Now, ownership percentage, if this person owns 100%, that's great. If they only own 50% and someone who's not in the household, they're only going to bring in 50% of the annual income for that particular item. Then we'll have the cash value if there is a cash value, annual interest if there is any, and then enter annual income if there is a fixed annual amount provided for that. That's going to be used to impute the income from assets. Once you're done entering that information, you can save and new, save and return. Just like all the other screens, save and new will let you enter another household income from assets record. Save and return will take you back to your main screen with that data. Do we have any questions on that particular area of manually entering data before we jump over to validating? Kelly, is there anything?
No, we've answered all the questions. I do want to point out for everybody, though, that if you are able to generate and submit an XML file, the manual entry is likely not needed by you. You might even have, if you are submitting an XML file, you might even have corrections that you need to make. But I would recommend very strongly that you make those corrections in your source software and regenerate your XML file and then re-upload it, because you want those changes to be in your source system as well as submitting those to your agency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So manual entry it's not required if you're able to generate an XML and upload that XML. Okay. That's it, sir. Go ahead.
Awesome. Looking at my watch, we are about to wrap this up. We're doing good. We're going to go back through validating, submitting, again, repetitive, but beneficial. So after you have entered your tenant events manually, you want to get back to the compliance period page by clicking the breadcrumb. And then you'll click the tenant event validation button. And then you're going to give this ready to validate. Now you can see for this example that I provided, I have one tenant event to be validated and I have one unit with tenant events. And that's probably not normally what most of the owner agents go through on a regular basis, because then you'd be like, why do I only have one unit? And you got to go back and check that and see what's going on. So again, now this is better. This is another property I have up here, but this makes a lot more sense because it's got a lot more information. This looks right to me. I'm happy. Going to click validate tenant events. And again, if everything's in there correctly, it's going to show up as passed. And that's what we want. And then we could submit. And then we give ourselves a hand because we did everything right the first time, which isn't like my normal operating procedure, but maybe you're a perfectionist and you, again, can pat yourself on the back and take the day off or whatnot because you're done. Of course, not everybody's being perfect. Back to the validation errors that we talked about. It's the same process as if you had imported your XML and you got some validation errors. You can click on the unit number. It's going to take you back. I'm going to bring this up just as an example for the ones we talked about. Like, for example, on this one, I don't have a household income record. I'm just going to go over here and add it. Well, no, I'm not. Well, that's great. I'm going to try one more time. So if you get an error like that, folks, this is a good example. Put in a support ticket. And like I said, we're going to go over that here again in a minute. So I'll show you what that looks like. Let me try one more and see if I can validate. And then I'm going to get out of here and go back to what we were doing. So I had corrected other errors. I'm going to click on this. It's going to take me here and it's telling me that I do not have the tenant rent portion. So I'm just going to do that. Put that in here. I've saved that. So now it's going to be, I need to go back to the compliance period to get to that tenant event validation button again. Go back over here. Now you've noticed once I validated, I only had one validation error after I fixed the others, and I fixed this. This error is still here because I have not told the system to go see if I fixed that. So now that I tell it to go see if I fixed that, then I'm good to go with my one event that I fixed. I know you're jealous. I only have one event and one unit. And then once I submit it, it's going to tell you you are about to submit that. And then you're going to click submit, and then it's going to tell you you're good. I just wanted to kind of show that in real life to show you that it is possible and I'm not making it up. Not that I lie to anybody intentionally. Now, if you do have to update this stuff, and maybe you had a spreadsheet that you had exported and you're entering that in manually, and you get to that and you notice, oh, I entered this twice because it's in my property management system twice. You can update and reconcile that data in your property management system so you don't run into the same thing next year. So we just went through what we do is validate after corrections, because we should call validate tenant events, tell the systems to go look at the good work I did fixing this, but it wouldn't fit on a button, I'm guessing. It's not going to dynamically update. We just reiterate that over and over. You make these changes, you come back to this page, you have to validate so the system knows they're fixed. Clicking on the hyperlink will take you to the actual event, or if there's no household name, like a household member name there, it will just take you to the event to see the list of events to see which ones are out of order. Remember to validate again after making manual updates. Going to make t-shirts and bumper stickers at this point. It seems I like to say that a lot. So now you have corrected everything. And you have validated and you get the passed thumbs up, which is what we want. Then you can click submit tenant events. And we're good. One more time, you're done until the agency decides to contact you with anything. So in this situation, after you've manually entered your events and you have submitted them, if you try to add any more events on any of the units, this is going to be disabled. You're not going to be able to, because again, you have submitted, which is great. If you do have to go back and change things, your agency will get in touch with you and they can set that status back to pending so you can make edits. At that point, you would have to submit again, but your agency personnel can work with you on how to do that. And that's it. We're done. After we're done with this recording, again, I'm not the boss of you. Go home. You've used your brain enough today. We'll write you a note. Any questions that have not been answered so well by Kelly and Sam in the chat?
Sarah, really quickly, we do have a question that we'll address here in just a moment, but I just want to stress to everybody that if you have specific questions around procedures for entering your information, if you need updates to your property/project, you need to contact your agency directly. We are simply a conduit by which you can transfer information to your agency. We don't make the rules. We don't enforce the rules. Your agency will give you the guidance and the enforcement that you're looking for. Okay.
Yes, and our thing is ProLink told us to check with the agency. Yes, that's what we told you. And again, we said this a couple of times throughout this presentation, you know, what your agency says goes. We're just here to try to make everything easier. And I do believe that we will try to do another session about this next year, maybe an updated version, depending on what we've delivered with the average income stuff, if there are any changes, and we can update what we're doing. We can also take input if there's anything we didn't cover that as an owner agent you would have liked to have seen or would be beneficial. You can let us know that as well. So I know we're going to leave you with a PowerPoint and we're going to post this recording, but there's other places you can get help. If your agency has the Procorem help enabled, you can click this little help icon down at the bottom of the screen. And so pretty much whenever you're in the tenant portal, you might see this little button right here. You click that and it's going to take you to this screen. And so you can search for a specific word, or you can, like, if I want to say income. You click into a topic and it's going to give you some more information in this little left-hand panel, left navigation panel. I just tried to make up some new words there, Kelly. And then it's going to go over some information in here and you can navigate to a lot of what we've talked about today. And if you see any discrepancies in here, you can let us know. But if your agency has that enabled, you can use that. If they don't, it's because they may have some documentation that they want to be your source of truth for putting in tenant events on behalf of that agency. And then, oh yeah, we just looked at that one. It's not enabled. Ask your agency if they have any training documentation, because I do know that a few of our agencies do that. If you receive any system errors that are not data related, like we talked about, you can enter a support ticket and it's going to bring up this little widget, and I'll show you what that looks like without actually entering a ticket that I will have to deal with later. Once you do this, you can put your name in here, your email address. Your email address is going to allow us to go back and forth and discuss this, because once you do this, this generates a ticket on our end. And when we reply to it, you're going to get that reply in your email. So that's why the email address is important. You would pick the product of Procorem because that's what we're working with right now. And if you want to pick the agency that you're working with, that's going to help. Well, if you get a system error, you can let us know. I did this. I have an error. Give me the name of the state that you work with. Like I'm in, or you could even just go up here and be like, oh, this is the URL where I got the issue. And I'm just going to, when we talk about URL, I can't remember what the acronym stands for. That's not an acronym I really care about. I mean, it's not related to housing in any way, but you can go up and copy and paste this and just stick it in here and then put information about, for this property, I'm getting these errors. You can also add attachments if you need to. And at that point, you'd hit send. We're going to get your ticket and you're going to get an email confirmation that we've gotten an email about your support issue. Again, data issues that you need to reconcile with your agency, deal with them directly. If we get a ticket from an owner agent that, you know, is because of data, we're going to just loop in someone from the agency and you're going to work with them and we're going to close that ticket and you're going to reconcile that with the agency. But again, system issue, we want to know about it. And I think that's all we have today. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending. And thank everybody for your patience as we went through these items one by one. Again, thanking Kimber and other owner agents or agencies. Well, owner agents have helped me become better understanding the process and XMLs and what's important to all of you. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out. You can email me directly. You can, and if you have a question on a support ticket, we'll answer it if we can. If not, we'll send you over to the agency to do it. And I think that is all I have. Bree, you want to wrap that up for us?
No, that's it. Thank you very much, Sarah. Great job. Thanks for the questions, and we'll provide all of the resources to this session, including the recording and any Q&A that might be helpful in the comments. We'll provide that. So thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.